Good morning.
Good morning.
Today is, what is today? September 5th, Sunday. Let's set our intention, make aspiration by saying the four immeasurable prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. So Victoria's going to talk about 8 consciousnesses and mind. What was the title?
It's really distinguishing appearances in reality, and it's mind and mental arisings, thoughts.
Okay, so she's going to talk on that, and then we will
meditate on that.
We'll meditate after that, and you can put in questions during her talk if you like. If things jump out or things you want explain more, or wait till later. That's it. I will turn things over to Victoria.
Good morning, everyone. I jotted down a bunch of notes. I hope it's not a lot. It's a very difficult subject, and I am completely not an expert. Actually, I'm very bad at understanding this myself. This is really from the teachings that I myself have received. And it's something that I try to think about all the time, because it's very important to familiarize ourselves with our mind, to know how the mind works, so that we know how to change it, so that we know how to employ the Buddhist path and effect the transformation. And I want to give you a little kind of a mantra that a friend of mine just introduced me to. She told me that her uncle, who was a Zen practitioner, told her this phrase, that mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. And it's wonderful. We can use this all the time. So Buddha said that all compounded things are impermanent. This is the key tenet of the Buddhist path of Buddha Dharma. Buddha also said in the second turning of the wheel that all things without exception are empty. And we've been speaking about emptiness quite several times. It's a very, very difficult topic, but saying that things are impermanent, compounded, and impermanent is another way of saying that things are empty. It's the same thing, really. Buddha spoke about the twofold emptiness, namely the emptiness of the self, the inner emptiness, and the exterior emptiness, the emptiness of the outer emptiness, the emptiness of phenomena, of things in the world. So what are these compounded things which are impermanent, or another way of saying things that are empty? The inner and the outer. In order to understand this, we have to look to our mind, consciousness, and how the world arises, and how we also sense the I within it, so the inner and the outer. And I'm going to read a small quote from a book called Luminous Clarity. It's a commentary on Karma Chagme's union of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, and this is Kenshin Trungpa Rinpoche. And he says, the nature of our mind is not just the nature of our mind. It is the nature of all things, external and internal. We need to realize the nature of all things or all phenomena in order to overcome or transcend our bewildered and confused projections. Nevertheless, in practice, we emphasize viewing the nature of our mind, because by looking at the mind, it is easy to see this empty nature directly, which is not true of looking at external phenomena. Furthermore, it is most important to resolve that this empty nature is the nature of our mind, because our mind is the source of all our experience and therefore all our suffering. If we realize the nature of mind, we overcome all suffering. So, in order to explain the nature of the mind in contrast to appearances or mental events, Buddha divided the mind into 8 functions of consciousness, or as we refer to them as 8 consciousness. This in contrast to the nature of mind. The first 6 consciousnesses are what we know and are familiar with most, and we recognize very easily. The 5 sense consciousnesses, namely the eye consciousness, the ear consciousness, the nose consciousness, the tongue consciousness, and the body consciousness. These are based on our bodily sensations. Each of these 5 consciousnesses has its very specific sense field and a sense object. And these consciousnesses cannot cross into the territory of the other consciousness. So, for example, eye consciousness can only see objects. Ears, our auditory consciousness can only hear sounds. Our body sensations, when we perceive objects through our tactile sensation, we can only feel things like that. We can feel heat and cold through our body, through our tactile sensation. Through our gustatory sensation, through our tongue consciousness, we can only taste things. Things like that. And they cannot cross into each other's territory. The eye consciousness cannot hear sounds, cannot perceive sounds. The auditory consciousness, the ear consciousness cannot see objects, does not know colors. So these 5 consciousnesses are directed outwardly, and they perceive sensory objects which are specific to their sense fields. But these consciousnesses are non-conceptual. They only merely experience the objects. They don't engage in constructing its conceptual form. They don't categorize the object into its kind of a filing system. They don't judge the object as good, better, or neutral, right? There's something else that does that, and that is the function of the 6th consciousness. It's called the mental consciousness. So the mental consciousness, the 6th consciousness, and the 5 and the 6 consciousnesses always go together. They're kind of impossible. They don't take place without each other, right? So there's always this kind of a conjoined thing that happens with the 5 sensory consciousness and the mental consciousness. So the 6th consciousness takes whatever sensory information that we receive from the 5 consciousnesses that experience, direct perceptual information, and they create thoughts and judgments about what is perceived. So, like we taste ice cream, right? For one person, it's pleasurable. That's 6 mental consciousness. If you're a diabetic, that same ice cream is something that you perceive as dangerous. That's your mental consciousness. For someone who's never tasted it, ice cream is something new. And, for someone who is on a very strict diet, ice cream is a terrible temptation. So that's the function. You get the raw materials, and then the 6th consciousness, the mental consciousness, categorizes it. We know our 6 consciousnesses as the constant activity that never ceases, right? The 6th consciousness is very different from the 5 sense consciousnesses, though. Because the 5 sense consciousnesses bring in the raw materials. The 6th consciousness cannot directly experience objects. It cannot have direct sensory experiences. Only the 5 sense consciousness can do that. But the 5 sense consciousnesses cannot determine or judge what they sense or directly experience, right? So what is the common thread that holds these 6 together? That common thread is a self-awareness, right? If we lick ice cream, we are aware that we're experiencing this sensation. If we say this ice cream is good, we are aware that we have formulated this thought. So there's always, the thread is the self-awareness. And by self-awareness, I mean our mind's ability to know that it experiences, and our mind's ability to know that it knows. That also is an experience. It's not a sensory experience, but the mind knows. So this self-consciousness is not separate ever from the 6 consciousnesses. And that self-awareness is that which knows directly that we are experiencing something, and that we are thinking regarding each and every experience. The self-awareness is always present, and it occurs in all consciousnesses, throughout all the experiences, throughout all the activities of the mind. And actually, it is that self-consciousness that makes all experiences possible. Because if we were not aware that we are aware, we wouldn't have experiences, right? It's our mind's ability and nature to be cognizant and to be aware. We'll talk about this nature later. This is the difference between the mental arisings, little experiential events, and the judgments that we create about the experiential events, and simply the cognizant nature, our awareness that knows that we are aware, that we are experiencing an experience, that we are experiencing thought patterns. That is different from the experiences and arisings themselves. This self-aware, cognizant nature always stays. That's our Buddha mind, really. Whether you're asleep, you have that cognizant, whether you're eating, walking, whatever you do, that self-conscious, cognizant quality never leaves us. Then there is the seventh consciousness, called the afflicted consciousness, the klesha consciousness. Klesha is a Sanskrit word for poison, really. And of course, Buddha Shakyamuni, our historical Buddha, came from the Indic background and used those kinds of words, Sanskrit words, which were a part of his world. So klesha consciousness is the consciousness of the afflictions. It is always present, just like our self-awareness. It is always present simultaneously with the self-awareness. We're always aware of the I. It's a fixation of the duality of the I and the other, because if there's an I, there's always another, right? We cannot think of an I without a contrast of the other. So it's either called the I consciousness or the dualistic consciousness. I mean, they're one and the same, really. They're just two ways of looking at a different, looking at the same thing, but in different aspects. So this constant dualistic fixation leads to afflictions, the kleshas, the disturbing emotions, because the other always poses some difficulty for the I consciousness, which lives in constant tension between these two things, the I and the other. He has more than I do. He's got better things. I want his things. I hate him. He threatens me. All this kinds of stuff arises out of this consciousness. And, from this tension, all of our afflictions pop out. Our mental afflictions pop out, And this consciousness is what we have to really work on. We have to subdue it, because the seventh consciousness is the source of all of our suffering. Then also there is the eighth consciousness, which is called alaya. Alaya in Sanskrit means all ground consciousness, all ground. And it is the ground of all mental activity. It is referred to as mere knowing. It is present when the mind is completely still, or if the mind is busy with thoughts. That is that cognizant, aware quality of the mind. It's present in this alaya consciousness without any interruption. That is kind of the closest to our most subtle mind, to the nature of mind. It is something that is always there, but what is it exactly? So the eighth consciousness is also called the storehouse consciousness. It's that which stores all of our karmic seeds, that later become what we call imprints. This consciousness has two functions. It stores and reactivates these seeds. When the circumstances arise, the seed, there's water, and the seed is in the soil, and the seed sprouts and things arise out of it. The alaya consciousness in the two aspects is both the cause and effect. The cause is the storing of impressions, and the result is the resurgence of impressions. And that's kind of what accounts for people being born with their very specific mental imprints, right? So some people are born and they're geniuses, musical geniuses at 2. Other people, we notice very early in their life, at the age of infancy, they have emotional disturbances. They have tremendous anger. They act out, things like that, things that one couldn't have learned, but things that are really kind of reactivated, one brings them with us, because we can witness and see, we can observe those qualities so early in life, you know, way before like learned behaviors. The eighth consciousness is kind of like the chicken and the egg, you know, and we'll discuss that later, you know, because the chicken is the egg and the egg has the chicken, you know, they're always together, the cause and effect. That's really like the glue of samsara. That's how samsara always happens, you know. So this is how we contrast the nature of mind and its arisings, the thoughts, feelings, experiences. You know, the eight consciousness are in contrast to the nature of mind. So, you know, a lot goes into producing a single thought. You know, a single mental arising is a hugely compounded thing. I mean, because things happen so quickly and we never really examine, right? We don't analyze. I mean, if we're not meditators, we don't analyze. We kind of go, oh, thought, you know, we don't really we haven't really looked at it very closely. We don't know how much goes into that thought. You know, we perceive a flower or a person and then we add to it. I hate this flower. I hate this person. It bothers me. I hate him. Or I really want them. I must have it. You know, it's almost like, you know, when we take food, you know, food being the, you know, sensory information, and then we add to it, we add sulfates, you know, we add the I hate, I love sulfate, you know, this I hate, I love or crave is not an intrinsic quality to the sensory experience. It is an added, it's an added thing, and it not just preserves the food, but it also corrodes it. It's both an additive and a contaminant. So this is what we do with sensory information. We very often contaminate it by adding all this other stuff onto it from our seventh and eighth consciousness. The I love, I hate is our afflicted dualistic mind. Every time, you know, we perceive a flower and then we add on to it, you know, that is all added from our seventh mind of affliction. That is the cause of our suffering, right? Because if it was just a flower and I didn't hate it, I would remain neutral. I would just perceive a flower and I would move on to the next sensory experience. But when I say I hate it is when I get stuck and all these things start to work inside myself. What starts to work inside myself? Karma. Cause and effect, you know. This is the cause of our suffering. It's the additive that, you know, that contains and is composed of karma and the five afflictions. In turn, each mental arising produces further karma and, you know, steers affliction to be deposited in our banks again and again inside the eighth consciousness, the alaya, the ground consciousness. It's not so much the flower or the person that is stored. You know, that sensory information just kind of comes and goes, but what is stored is the accompanying the sulfate, the hate or love is what gets stored. And next time somebody comes along or we see another flower, it gets re-triggered, you know, and produces the next karmic cause and karmic event, you know. So this is what we really have to pay attention to, not the sensory information, but the sulfate, the additive, the seventh, eighth consciousness stuff, you know. We have to be very aware what gets stored inside ourselves. So each event is accompanied by the seventh afflicted consciousness. It's like the chicken. The chicken is the egg, like I said before. Inside of that chicken is already another egg, and inside the egg is already potentially living another chicken. And ad infinitum. And this process never ends unless we stop it ourselves, you know, unless we do something consciously to stop this process. Afflictions generate karma. The cause is the result. The result carries the next cause. So, you know, this I hate, I must have, I crave, it works like physical laws of nature, you know. They never stop, you know. It's like gravity never stops, you know. We have to do something counter to that to stop this, you know, the samsaric wheel. You know, karma simply means action. and each action has a reaction, a result. So the chicken and the egg, as Dzongchen Khyentse Rinpoche says, it's a closed circular system that is eternally perpetuated, and it perpetuates within itself, you know. The chicken and the egg are internally bound and inseparable. They are one and the same thing. There's only like a little temporal loop that happens, but it's a closed system. You know, on the other hand, our consciousness number 6, you know, the mental consciousness, is our conceptual consciousness, and it's very, very linear, and it kind of really doesn't understand that we're inside this system, right, of karmic cause and effect. That's how the 7th consciousness, our ego dualistic consciousness, keeps us inside this wheel. You know, we can never step out of it with simply this, you know, conceptual 6 mental consciousness. It's you know, it's like you know, it's like the water wheel in the flour mill. You know, one bucket comes up, water comes into it, the bucket is lower than the next thing, you know, then the next thing, then the next thing, and we're always drinking this kind of like a cocktail, these buckets of water, you know. That's our whole life, one bucket after another, you know. If I don't hate this person, I find another person, you know, somebody else steps into that thing, you know. And I also wanted to say regarding the 5 afflictions is that they're very much like a mental illness. So if you're sick, you know, in other words, they're not caused from the outside. The afflictions are an internal thing, you know. If you're sick and you're nauseous, you look at food, the best food, you want to throw up because it reminds you that you're just about to vomit, you know. You know, if you've been burnt, you don't want to sit on a seat because you know it's going to hurt. You know, those are afflictions. They're not even like magnets. They don't have to seek out the next object. We project them onto all the things from the inside, you know, and that's how karma is perpetuated all the time. But you know, obviously, you know, that's not the only way to live. I mean, there are those who have mastered and transformed the ego, you know, the ego consciousness, because it is transformable. It's not our base. It's kind of like the imposter, you know, the 7th consciousness. Masters have transformed dualistic mind, the 7th consciousness, into wisdom and compassion. For example, our teacher, Garchen Rinpoche, when he walks into the room, it's like the air around him becomes warm and bright. It's filled with perfume. It's filled with warmth of the sun. His wisdom is the luminosity of the sun rays, and his love and compassion is the warmth of these same rays. They're not separable. This is only how our 6th mental consciousness has to view it from different aspects, but it's the same thing. The warmth and the brightness are the same aspect of the sun, right? That's his mind. It's not like the mind of self-cherishing, the dualistic mind. He doesn't come in the room and go, "Ooh, I hate that person, you know, they have more than me, and I want what they have. You know, I crave their possessions. You know." No, he comes in the room and he uses his Buddha mind. He goes, "I am here to bring benefit to others. I live only to bring benefit to others." And that's why when he comes in, it's like the sun comes in, you know, and these clouds are just dissipate, you know, the clouds, the mental arisings, all this darkness, the rain, and the bolts of lightning, all that is gone. He comes in, and the sky, the mind-like sky of awareness is just completely clear, and the wisdom is just shining in the sky. That's him, you know. So, because why is that? Because he has realized, you know, the nature of mind. You know, the nature of mind is often compared to the ocean, and mental arisings are often compared to the waves. So he has pacified the waves, and he functions, his consciousness functions not out of the 7th ego consciousness of affliction, but it functions out of a higher consciousness, his Buddha consciousness. He connected to that by stilling the afflictions, by not allowing the imposter to be who he is, or how he acts, or how he perceives. So To dissolve our afflicted consciousness, the ego consciousness, we have to practice like hell so that we can transform the afflictions into love, like him, like the Buddhas before us, like so many practitioners have done for, countless eons. I mean, to transform afflictions into love, which is like opening your parachute, right? Because there's only like the mind of self-cherishing or love, wisdom and compassion mind. That's the mind of love. Our Buddha nature and our samsaric nature. We have to practice like hell to do that. And we have to do that ASAP, and we have to do it all the time, because the more we spend time not practicing, the more of this crap we deposit into our alaya consciousness. And chances are, that we've been here, countless lives, re-triggering all those same afflictions, hating over lifetimes and over lifetimes. And, we all probably have someone who's already passed away and we still hate him. We don't need someone to have the hate, People have come and gone. They've died, they've passed on, but we still go, oh, I hate that person. And I know some of us are dealing with extremely difficult things, but just keep in mind, please, it's not the person, it's not the sensory information. It's our consciousness that adds to this. After all, there will always be difficult people in our life. What we do is we walk away compassionately. We don't fixate. We don't spend our existence, in these negative feelings, And so, what's the antidote, right? What's the antidote? Practice and the intention of enlightenment, the bodhisattva mind. The bodhisattva mind is the medicine to all this, the antidote to the illness of dualism, the self-cherishing affliction mind. A medicine isn't good if it's standing in the medicine cabinet, because it's not going to cure the illness just because we ran to the store and we bought it and we go, here it is, it's in my hand, but it's not going to work until you take it. So that's what it means. Don't read books, don't just, go to teachings, don't just learn and hear things and feel like, oh, I have this idea, I got this, I'm going to put it on my shelf. No, you have to practice. You have to take the medicine. You have to, venture on the path, and little by little by little, rid yourself of afflictions, of that afflicted consciousness. So the mind of enlightenment or Buddhahood is our nature, right? It's our basis. It's that consciousness that is always there, that pervades us all the time. It's something that we breathe in, we breathe out. It's always with us. It's our birthright. Actually, if we didn't have that consciousness, that self-cognizant awareness that is present at all levels and functions of our mind, the shittiest of thoughts couldn't really take place. We couldn't hate someone if we didn't have our Buddha nature. That's the weird paradoxical thing about it, we have to realize that. We have to understand that. It's, it's that amazing, bright, luminous capacity that allows us to create these clouds in the sky and obscure us and make us sick, and then those illnesses, those afflicted, when we're very deeply afflicted, we set the whole world on fire, because, we carry the fire inside. When the fire becomes, like hatred becomes very strong, we burn, people touch us, they burn, then they go on burning the rest of the world. We incinerate everything, that's what the afflicted mind does. So, our teachers, the Buddhas, show us how to, step out of this ocean of samsara and into the ground of enlightenment. That's the Buddha's path. That's the Buddha Dharma. So we become practitioners. We become awareness holders, and we guard like hounds against the seventh guy, this afflicted dualistic I consciousness, the self-cherishing I consciousness. And, please don't be content just about hearing about liberation or like placing it somewhere in your mental library. Please practice, liberate yourself little by little by little. Take the small negative emotions, breathe them out. You have now the practices, take them, see them. And when you can see them, and please know they're not outside, they're inside, they're right here, they're us. You know, the afflictions are us. Yes, people do bad things, but those are their afflictions. You know, if we don't take it, all negativity arises within us because we can perceive the same situation in a vastly different way. For example, I use as a, as my kind of like world system, I use, an example of mental institution. So I go to mental institution, right? I open my door, I leave my house, I go into the mental institution. You come into the mental institution, the first guy you meet is a patient and he spits on you, right? So what do? Do you spit on the guy back and you become like another patient? Or do you go, wait, he's here, he's in the mental institution because he has problems. So I will be patient. I'm a visitor. I will not spit back at him. I'm not a patient. Why should I spit back on that guy who has an afflicted mind? He's here because he's ill, right? That's one level of practice. That's the beginning level of practice when we can discern. When we know about afflictions, we know that that person, like me, has the Buddha nature and the afflictions, has the seventh mind, right? Then there is the next level. We practice and we gain certainty, we gain ability, so we become like nurses. We walk into the world, we walk into the mental institution, and now we're nurses. The guy spits on us, we take a rag, we patiently wipe him, we clean his butt, we clothe him, we take care of him, right? That's a higher level. That's a practitioner who's somewhere, traveling on the path of Dharma, And then there are our teachers. They're like the doctors. The guy can spit at him, he can, jump at him with the knife, but the compassion never ceases because he's a doctor. He's only there. He opens his door to walk into this mental institution only to benefit these patients. All his desire, all his reason for being is that he wants to cure, these mental patients. He wants them to become well. He wants them to convalesce. He wants them to be whole and complete again. So this is a person who is functioning out of the Buddha nature. This is a person who already knows all about afflictions, knows about mental disease, and he knows what to do with this. This is a, higher level of practice, but it's not just within our capacity. We have to understand that it's the only place to go. We have to go to that place. We have to stop being mental patients. And we have to go even further than being a visitor or a nurse. We have to go to the highest place, because only out of the highest place is there really like a liberation, or even just knowing things, knowing reality, as opposed to all these little arisings, that cloud us. So please practice and don't stop. Please practice knowing that your enemy's face is your afflicted mind that you impose on someone else. Don't do that. Don't be a patient. Walk away compassionately and in awareness from people who are deeply afflicted, who hurt, who cause you pain. Why do they cause you pain? Don't feel with this ego mind, oh, he did it to me, he hurt me. Feel like that guy's a mental patient. He spit, he hurt me because he has mental disturbances. Am I going to enter into the same afflicted relationship and be another patient? No. You make a decision in the morning before you leave your house. When you go out into the world, you're not going to be anything like that. So separate the hate, separate this own energy of your own arising, be with that person in a different way, out of acting, not reacting. Work, set your mind toward the view and work with your view. Don't create that which you call an enemy. Don't make that storyline. Enemy, the word enemy, the concept of enemy, the feeling of enemy is the wheel. It's the chicken and the egg. All you do is create more and more afflictions. You store them for later. The seventh consciousness, you have to know, is a charlatan. It's an imposter. It's not your true nature. It's only some kind of like a, organizing principle, you know. So you have your six consciousnesses, the five sense consciousnesses, the mental consciousness. The six consciousness is only supposed to be like a librarian, organizing information into big chunks, you know, something that holds your memories, knows, you know, who your kids are, who your parents are, you know. But don't make it the consciousness that knows who your enemies are. Don't create enemies, you know. Don't charge your seventh consciousness with becoming this, you know, this person, this being, you know, who creates afflictions, you know. Don't, you know, populate the mental institution with more patience, you know. And this is where it becomes, you know, this is where emptiness and the understanding of emptiness, the view, the emptiness of self and phenomena becomes essential. Because when we objectify things as real and out there, you know, like, you know, I hate this guy. He's the hate on his own, rather than he's just a guy, and I put the hate as an external ingredient, as a sulfate I project onto him, you know. When we do that, you know, when the storyline begins, we go, he's this and he's so bad and he did this and he did that, you know. When we're lost in the storyline, we're lost, we're done, you know. But and we're done because we've forgotten that we're the creator of the narrative. So, you know, remember this, you know. Don't activate your alaya consciousness in these, you know, to store negative imprints and have them reactivated forever and ever and ever, you know, because we've already done this countless lives, you know. You know, the ego is like, can become a fraud made up of these conglomerate, you know, conglomerate conceptual clusters, you know. That's what means compounded phenomena, you know. Don't maintain this ego, you know. Use it just as your kind of like another function of your mind, you know, for your memories, you know, for, you know, kind of, you know, for your analysis. But don't use it to create enemies and store bad things inside yourself, you know. You know, this attachment to ego is what prevents us from change. Going from misery to happiness is like going from imprisonment to liberation. You know, become aware of the composite nature of thoughts arising, and do it now, you know. Make it like the main practice. Garchen Rinpoche just recently wrote us an email, and he said, he gave us a teaching. He said, don't analyze anger. This anger is good, this anger is bad. There's no such thing. He said, all anger should be abandoned. Don't fool yourself. You must drop it. Drop all anger. Look at your anger without the storyline. See it arise inside you. You know, when you can see it, when you catch it before the storyline, he did this and he's terrible, you know, catch it, look at it, and then drop it. Make it your friend. Make it your exercise. Make it your practice to catch the five afflictions. Catch your jealousy. Catch your anger. Catch your stupidity, you know, ignorance. Catch your ignorance of not knowing who you are, your Buddha nature. Look at it and drop it and connect to your Buddha nature. You have the 9 purification breaths, so you know how to drop things. You know how to get rid of them. You know, any difficult place, regardless of the storyline, whether it's, you know, connected to anger or jealousy or, or some other, some other affliction, or a compounded, you know, cluster of afflictions, is like, it's like a black dwarf star. When a star explodes, it becomes a dwarf, you know. Like any addiction, it's like a very, very, very tight place that consumes all light, you know. The sky implodes around it, you know, around this tiny perpetually moving rotating center. That center is the fixation. It's the I hate, I want, it's mine, you know, they versus me. So don't be that black dwarf star, you know. Drop the fixation. Know your fixation. Drop your fixation. Now you know about the 8 consciousnesses, and you know about your nature of your mind. You know, that's on the 9th breath. When we connect to it, you connect to your Buddha nature. Remember, if you drop your karmic pain body, if you practice dropping it every moment that it arises, That's every moment that you connect to your Buddha nature. And I hope that I didn't speak too much, but use your afflictions like fire to make like wood for the fire. Look at your affliction, light the match of awareness, and let it burn up until you're free of it. So with this, we should practice the 9 breaths of purification. Maybe first round, just in a very simple way, taking out the desire and attachment, addiction through our red channel, taking out hatred, aversion, and rejection through our white channel, and then taking out the doubt of our Buddha nature, taking out the doubt. And by the way, also not knowing our Buddha nature is like that place where we have anxiety that turns into depression, that turns into meaninglessness, because when we don't connect to Buddha nature and we don't act from that place, our life is very, very meaningless and dark. So, and then after kind of the general round, when you practice at home later, find difficult places and exhale them, practice.
Okay, we have a lot of questions. So I think we should just take questions now, because
I spoke
want
too
to make
much. I'm
sure
so
people
sorry.
are clear on things that you said. I find it difficult to maintain consciousness when I'm out in public and around a lot of stimulation. Any advice?
Yeah, it's very, very simple, actually. Use your breath. On the inhale, remember, you are inhaling Buddha nature, because the Buddha nature pervades everything. It's what allows for all things to arise. It allows you to go out in the public. It allows you to perceive the public. It allows you to be, period. It's the basis of all things. Your mind is the basis of all things. Your Buddha nature mind is the basis of all things. Inhale. You could do that in public. Nobody prevents you from doing it. And on the inhale, connect to your Buddha nature. And with that exhale, anxiety or the difficulty that makes it difficult for you to be in public. Also what's very difficult to be in public is because we connect to our habitual mind of negativity. We fear and find being in public very difficult. So if you remember that others have Buddha nature, you have Buddha nature, it'll make your world experience much, much easier.
Would the 8th consciousness also be considered the all-encompassing non-dual energy? For example, the one, the source?
It can be. So when it is, it depends on the lineage and different traditions. In some lineages, it is called that when all the karmic seed is emptied out of the store consciousness, it becomes the Rigpa, the Buddha consciousness. But as long as it has karmic seed, we distinguish it from the Buddha nature. Now, please keep in mind, it's not like there's this and all these other compartments. The 8 consciousnesses take place on the all ground, in our Buddha nature space. Nothing can happen without this cognitive awareness, which is our nature. That's the Buddha nature.
Would you say that alaya is non-judgmental, just as the first 5 consciousnesses are?
It is, but it's as a store consciousness. As soon as circumstances arise, it re-triggers, that snake of hatred or the snake of jealousy or the snake of ignorance. So you have to be very aware. You have to see things kind of, they're almost like fumes. Learn to slow down your thought. That's what meditation is. I mean, the whole Buddhist path is just about what I've just explained, like getting, connecting to your Buddha nature and seeing these arisings, this, conceptual mind as a tool, like your arm. Don't let your arm go slapping yourself and others while you're asleep because you're not aware. Feel when things get triggered and arise out of the alaya consciousness. Sometimes you see a guy in the subway or somewhere, and you look at someone, and suddenly you feel the fumes arise, and you're like, I can't stand that person, blah blah blah, and the whole narrative starts. Catch it before you go into the narrative. Catch it, look at it, befriend it, and drop it. Drop it. Don't allow it to cloud your Buddha nature.
How does one know when to start and end this process you speak of?
You do it all the time. It's like breathing, with every breath you become aware. You make sure that you're acting out of like the view, the view being that all things are empty, they're impermanent. If difficult situation arises, I don't need to add sulfate to it. I don't need to add the difficulty. Look at it, let it pass, and return back to the stillness of your mind. Return to your Buddha nature. Return to your practice. Keep reconnecting all the time. Try to use your breath all the time. You see difficult situations, difficult people, use Tonglen. That's practice. That's when you're not unconscious. You're using Tonglen, you're practicing, you're aware, and you act with awareness. Use the 9 purification breath. Be in awareness and act out of awareness.
So if I'm getting in the car, it isn't just a car. I'm stressing about the oil change I'm putting off. Is that right?
Yeah, I change the oil. Don't fall into these kinds of mental habits of keeping yourself in anxiety. You have to know that we cause all of these things inside ourselves. I mean, needless to say, the world around us presses on us and does different things, but our reactions are our reactions. We have to use measures preventatively, so that we don't always like live in stress and anxiety, by doing all these little things, mainly by being aware. Listen, if you're if you're a procrastinator, at least know that and try to change that. And also, if you're a procrastinator and you are very habituated to living with lots of anxiety as a result of your action of procrastination, be aware of it. Either like procrastinate but don't worry, or don't procrastinate and drop the anxiety.
You mentioned the 8th consciousness goes on and on, eternal. Is the 7th consciousness also eternal?
As long as we have the 8th consciousness, we have the 7th consciousness. Yes, of course, but as I said, when there is such a thing as enlightenment, and we have it with our teachers. If when a person liberates afflictions and a person liberates ignorance, because there are 2 reasons why we are not fully blown Buddhas. We are like seedling Buddhas. Our Buddha nature is always there. That's what allows for everything to happen, the worst of things. The reason why we can't get to the full-blown Buddha nature and be Buddhas ourselves, which we're supposed to, we're meant to, we're born to, is the obscurations of afflictions, the 5 poisons, and obscurations of ignorance, not knowing our Buddha nature and the workings of the mind. We don't know the 8 consciousnesses. We don't know how things arise. We're so fooled. We think, oh, there are things out there. This is how stuff is. There's good and bad stuff by itself, just floating all around me. But it isn't like that. So if we can clear those things, we no longer have the 8 consciousnesses. We only have the Buddha consciousness. It's like waves in the ocean. When we pacify the 8 consciousnesses, the ignorance and the afflictions, the ocean becomes still. And so we function out of our Buddha nature only. That's what Buddhas do.
Are we ever aware of alaya? It is called the 8th consciousness, but how do we sense if it is not part of the mental consciousness?
Mental consciousness is like a monkey. It's the most active mind. It's the crazy mind that doesn't stop. But inside that mind, like I said, once in a while you look at something and you get triggered, and you feel a sense of anxiety or a sense of hatred or a sense of jealousy. That's the arising that comes from that deeper consciousness.
In terms of dealing with kleshas, does it make sense to figure out what our most damaging afflictions are and focus on reducing or eliminating them, or do we deal with these things as they arise? This is an amazing class, by the way.
We must do both. They're not separable, So in practice, start with smaller things, like our teacher always says, take smaller pieces of wood, take more smaller situations, but ultimately you have to liberate yourself of the deepest and the biggest things, like the biggest obstacles. You have to kind of burn the tree that fell on top of your roof and broke your house. You have to deal with the deepest and the most scary places. We train little by little so we can go into the scariest of places and be okay with it. Remember, once you really liberate yourself from it, you realize that that scary place is like the dark room in which you mistake the rope for a snake. That's what happens in the end. In the end, you go, oh shit, I was so fixated on this for such a long time. And I know, as I said before, I don't mean to minimize. Some of us deal with extraordinarily deep, deep pain. But there is something karmic that brings us to that junction where all the circumstances arise together. And if we eliminate little by little the storehouse consciousness, we, by eliminating our afflictions and by eliminating our ignorance, that's how store consciousness is liberated, becomes free, becomes empty. It's the sky that becomes cloudless, and suddenly you connect to your Buddha nature, because now the sky is clear and you don't have all this weather. Weather are your emotions and things like that. I mean, it's also beneficial to look up the 52 mental formations, because that basically summarizes how all these things that I've just talked about function as clusters of thoughts and things like that. Some are constantly present, like our emotions. Others are come and go things that are much more sporadic. But we must, no matter how difficult, liberate every one of our afflictions. And you can only do it by practicing the mind of enlightenment, the bodhisattva mind. That is the antidote. That's the medicine. Also, I want to say this is very, very important. Even though we all have Buddha nature, only our teachers, Buddhas who've already connected to the Buddha mind, who live constantly the Buddha mind, not just had glimpses, but now live and function out of it. All of their activities are the Buddha mind. They not only look at us and see everything, they also know what to do to help us. They're the doctors. The teachers, I urge you to seek out qualified teachers, because they will give you the pointing out instruction, pointing out the nature of your mind instructions. Very, very few of us in this lifetime will achieve those experiences without teachers. Only teachers can activate those seeds inside us. Otherwise, we'll just continue to activate our alaya consciousness and our afflictions. So having a teacher in one's life is everything. It's like having the key to the door, and you open the door. Beyond the door, is the big picture. It's the open parachute. You don't fall from the sky. You're flying, soaring in the sky like a bird.
In other words, even if I work diligently, do I drag around misery, anger, and ego eternally?
Eternally is a closed system. It's the circle. So you can live inside the circle, or you can go out of it and live in all this other sphere. The circle is very, very tight little thing that is kind of strung and held, by reactivating the alaya consciousness. That's based on, that's the, the glue of it all is the seventh consciousness, the self-cherishing mind. We can very easily go out of it. It's not easy, but it's doable. And that's what, enlightened beings do. They step out of it. They get off that train, and that's it. They're done with it.
One's ignorance can be a teacher?
Of course. Absolutely. You have to befriend it. It takes like sharp and incredible brutal honesty to know and to look at our afflictions. What allows us to look is this cognizant aspect of our mind, which is luminosity and cognizance. We can see when we're ignorant. We can see our ignorance. And if you make friends with it, you can drop it. It's okay. We know that it's there, but we don't have to act on it. The moment when we don't act on it, we drop it, our wisdom bursts. We live outside of that closed system. We've abandoned the closed system. It's like you live in a house and you have never left that house because you're afraid. Your fear holds you prisoner for eternity, you know. So this is what practice does, and this is what the presence of a teacher does. The teacher cannot give you your Buddha mind. He can point you. He can give you the key, how you open the door. You know, practice is opening that door and walking out of that house. So that's it. You know, leave the mental institution, practice.
How can we abandon our anger without letting it build up under the surface?
That's exactly how. You look at it and you know that this is the disease. It's like holding on to cancer. Do you want to always hold on to cancer? You know, you look at it, you go, this is cancer. Hate is cancer. Hate is fire. I don't want to be burnt. I don't want to be sick. I will abandon it. I will take the medicine. I will practice it. I will drop it. And the more times you drop it, the less stronger it is. It becomes like a tiny little flame, and then at some point no longer controls you. You know, you don't have to be a mental patient just because you live in a mental institution.
You didn't speak too much. I wrote notes, 2 pages. Thank you, Victoria. I use these concepts in my therapy practice, but have trouble getting patients. So this person is a therapist, Tanner. I use these concepts in my therapy practice, but have trouble getting patients, seeing their liberation as possible. Any advice for helping others see this possibility?
Then you're probably much more wise and aware than I am. So I feel like it's the opposite, that, you know, I should be giving you advice. You know, the thing is always, you know, like before speaking, I pray to my teacher, I pray to the Buddhas to be able to benefit beings. I think if you work within that space of wanting to benefit, good things will happen, because after all, it's not about ideology. We don't want to convince someone, you know, that there is another ideology. What we really want them to do is take the medicine and kind of move away from their affliction. You know, we are so, in the Western society, are so enamored with afflictions. You know, we go into therapy and talk about our dead mother whom we hate, you know, for the next 20 years. We transfer it to our kids, you know, it never ends, you know. But it's about, you know, it's about like separating the narrative from the actor. You know, it's about knowing that the play, you know, is not how the actor lives, you know, who he is, you know, finding identity and not fixating, you know, on the narrative. I think that's what's very important. Finding our identity is knowing that we have Buddha nature. That's really knowing. Following the narrative is the complex of the eight consciousnesses. It's the whole other thing. That's what keeps us locked in the house forever.
How often should I practice through it myself of the angry consciousness? Several times a day? I am struggling very badly in this area. Thank you for your wonderful and inspiring talk.
You know, anger is a very difficult thing, you know, and you have to break it down into many different components, you know, because the fixation, you know, there's the gross and the subtle fixations. You know, part of the fixation is we focus on the person who hurt us, you know, something. But then there's the subtle part where we feel like a victim, you know, the recipient, you know, so we hold that tension, you know, like I said, you know, the dualistic mind, the ego mind always has the self and the other. You know, we have to break it down gently, little by little. You practice it all the time. So when you do formal practice session, you sit on the cushion, you know, you do your thing, you know, you're doing the 9 purification breaths. Try to find, you know, select like, you know, bad situation, and then delete it, breathe it out, find it and delete it. When you go out into the world, if you know, learn what triggers you, see who triggers you, but it's not so much about them, you know, catch the moment of being triggered and practice on the spot, practice all the time. You know, we're on the street, often we see like a homeless guy, you know, our most immediate response, he pissed on himself, he stinks, he's terrible. You know why? Because that's the usual response, because it's a very uncomfortable place for us. I mean, after all, the honest truth is that guy is just like me. He was born to parents. He may have had a beautiful house and a family. You know, he may have lost his job, lost his wife, lost his family, and now he's, you know, we have to learn how to work with uncomfortable places, and we have to learn how not to substitute the storyline which keeps us away from what we think is uncomfortable, you know, to be able to experience, to feel directly. It's like look, you have Tonglen. So when you see that guy who pissed on himself, the drunken guy, if you can't like ask him and bring him some food or do something for him, do Tonglen irrespectively, visualize him and breathe out to him that he's in a beautiful house surrounded by family, at a Christmas dinner. Do that for him. And eventually this practice will bring you to a place where you can do physically things for others out of your good heart. And you won't care if they appreciate it or not, because that's not your motivating force. Your motivating force is that you love to do it. You love to work and live out of your Buddha consciousness, your Buddha mind. You could do it all the time. Just don't get triggered, don't react, act, and don't substitute things for concepts. Make sure that you have awareness that you're acting and thinking and feeling. Don't be afraid.
Thank you so much for this talk, Victoria. I'm grateful for the feminine voice in this platform. So am I, actually. I was wondering how you apply this in your marriage. Oh, I don't know if I want to go there. I mean, come on. I love the concept of thinking of my husband as a mental patient. Yes, definitely. Definitely. When my compassion runs short with him. My question is, when do you personally determine what point you should react to your mind's interpretation of the situation? That's interesting. When do you personally determine what point you should react to your mind's interpretation of a situation?
When you practice, the more you practice, when I said, select and delete kind of a thing, you become aware of what you're aware much more on a constant basis, right? Everything is not like just this fusion of a ball, the thought becomes so powerful that you're swept into it. What you become aware of is like you're aware of what you're thinking. At that time, that's the time you can change the narrative. That's the time, because the mind is like a mirror surface, right? So whatever you have inside will be reflected onto the outside. It's like, if you're healthy, the world will look beautiful, and the sun will shine. But if you're sick, you go out and you'll feel like very, very sick. All your negativities will be triggered. So try to practice breaking down the eight consciousnesses, becoming aware of them. Know what compounded things are. Know that they will arise and they will fall. So don't fixate. Don't make it like it's going to be forever, because we have this thought for 20 minutes or 2 days. They will fall. We'll move on from one thought to another. Try to use, your patience, your kindness, the bigger part of your mind.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your talk.
Practice.
Let's dedicate to the merit from today's session for the benefit of all beings. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Nick Solidio, for your generosity and kindness, Victoria and Nick.
Sorry for talking so much.
By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. We have visitors, so we have to kind of cut it a little early. We have our young cousins coming. They're young 9 and 10-year-olds, so they're not going to wait. So see you next week.
Thank you. Practice.